welcome to the very first episode of what is probably going to become the Warrior Within podcast. My name's Stu, and I'm going to introduce you to the founder of the Warrior Within project, Stefan Daniel. Stefan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stu. Yeah, my name's Stefan Daniel. I'm the founder of the Warrior Within podcast and the Warrior Within project here in Plymouth, and we help veterans with various things, including mental health, by providing free training in a martial arts facility, ultimately using Muay Thai, cold water therapy, meditation, deep stretching, yoga, stuff like that. And this is the first one of many. We've invited our good friend and my fellow Army veteran. We were in the same regiment together, Mr. Tom Adams, and he's going to have a little chat with us about what he's been doing, before he joined the Army and during and after. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. And he came training today with us.
He did indeed,
which he said was really, really easy.
Starting to regret my life decisions now on that.
He's regretting. He's regretting having eggs Benedict prior to
10 minutes before training. Yeah,
I saw him and he was eating it. I was like, man, you don't want to be eating that before training.
He was telling me afterwards, like it's lovely when you're eating, eggs Benedict. It's not nice when you see it come back the other way.
No, it came close. Close.
Yeah. Especially when you're, in the middle of doing burpees or something like that in the gym.
For sure. And we learned that lesson very quickly. Don't eat before you come for a workout. Correct. So good to know. So I guess really we should probably start with, how do you guys actually know each other? Since saying he's a guest is one thing, but you guys are friends, right? You've known each other a long time.
Yeah, a little bit. We were in the same regiment, but our timings were slightly different. I was away teaching while Tom was in Recce Troop, and I was in Recce Troop prior to him.
Okay.
But we kind of knew of each other, and
I think we sort of knew each other, but our paths didn't really cross a great deal. I knew who Ski was. I think everyone in the regiment knew who Ski was. Just that guy you walk past and you look the other way.
I was going to say, yeah, there's definitely a story behind that.
It was just that there was a few ranks above me, and I was a young trooper and he was a sergeant, I believe, at the time. Okay. So our paths didn't really cross. Different sort of squadrons, and then when he left Recce Troop and on to training, I moved into Recce Troop. So we knew each other, but didn't really pass each other.
Just for people that maybe don't know much about military kind of life, like myself, I guess. When you say Recce Group, what do you mean? When you say regiment, like you call it Recce something?
So within your regiment, you have your squadrons.
Right.
You have especially the Queens Royal Hussars that we were in. You had the A, B, C, D, and then you had Command Troop, which looked after the radios and that sort of stuff. And then you had Recce Troop, which was technically smaller vehicles behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, and it was an honour to be in Recce Troop within the regiment. It was definitely an achievement to get to Recce Troop, because you're sort of picked within your squadron. Almost like I always say best of the best within the squadrons get chosen for Recce Troop, where your training is probably a bit more advanced. They expect a lot more from you.
Right. You have to be fitter.
You have to be fitter. Everyone else. Yeah. You basically, I'd say you're top 5% within the regiment. Yeah. Get to go into Recce Troop.
You do a lot of work on your own. You work directly with like the division and the battle group instead of like just within the regiment. So it's
gotcha. Okay.
Yes, I don't know. I enjoyed my time in Recce Troop for sure. It's my favourite part of my career.
Yeah, it was good. It was. I think getting to there is great. I mean, once you become Recce Troop, I mean, you walk around with your head held on anyway, being in the military and the Queens Royal Hussars, but when you make Recce Troop, you walk then with your held head high within the regiment, so you feel a bit better than everyone else, and you just feel that sort of privilege. It was definitely an achievement within the regiment to get to Recce Troop.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me know. I had no idea when it comes to kind of any kind of regiments. Really, unfortunately, I was never in the forces. I've had a lot of experience with people, and Stefan and I, we met about a year ago, but realistically, it's not something I have much experience with. So it's good to get some insight there, and I'm assuming there'll be people that'll be listening that also don't know as well. So I guess tell us a little bit about, how did you, I guess, from the process of signing up to kind of where you are now. Let's start from the beginning.
As a child, I was never one to join the military. I've never come from a military background. My parents were in the military. I wasn't exposed to anything military growing up. I'm not going to sit here and say my childhood was really difficult. I'm not going to say it's really easy. There was moments where, I think there was, I think a lot of childhoods probably the same. You get a bit of bullying at school.
Sure.
You don't fit in. You find it hard to find where you belong. Even with my close knit friends, I was almost like a little bit bullied within that close group as well. So it was really difficult growing up. My mum was disabled. She got rheumatoid arthritis. And there's a few moments that stick out in my mind where my mum was really ill and she'd be in bed screaming, saying she wants to be with her mum, and her mum passed away in 1986. So as a young child going through that, it's not a great experience.
No, not at all.
I'm not saying that moulded me into joining the army, but it just sort of probably subconsciously made me a little bit stronger minded.
For sure, yeah.
My dad worked nights, so I very rarely see my dad. So my dad would work like 12-hour shifts because my mum didn't work, so he had to work super hard to pay the bills and keep me and my two sisters. So childhood was at its moments, but also had its good moments. I used to play football every time after school, like a lot of kids. But it's weird because during school time, your group of friends, but I got a little bit of bullying within that friends.
Yeah.
As soon as you leave school, as soon as you're out in your estate, that all stops. So it was a great time then, but school time wasn't great for me.
What part of the country was this? Were you?
Worcester.
Worcester.
So Worcester, the Midlands area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So normal school. I mean, it's probably a better school now than what it was back then. I think in the 90s, a lot of schools weren't really up to scratch.
No.
It was difficult. So I tend to call myself like an in-betweener. I was never with the sort of intelligent, geeky kids as it was. And I was never with the sort of fighters and the sort of roughneck kids. I was in the middle. But I knew groups from all categories. So I found it really hard to find where I belonged. There was a certain amount of bullying within my childhood, which probably is bittersweet now because those kids that did do the bullying, I see them now and they're like, "Oh, Tom, you're doing really well," shake my hand and see him in town, and there's a bit of pride there. It's basically a middle finger jobby sort of thing,
yeah.
which is always great. Never once did I ever think about joining the military, and it wasn't until I was 21. So I joined quite late. I didn't go at 16. Like, did you join?
I joined at 16.
Yeah, so a lot of people go from 16 from school. I didn't.
Right.
I did an apprenticeship before joining the military.
Do you remember the moment when you thought, "This is what I'm going to do"?
It's a weird story. So I had a day off school, a day off work, because I had a funeral to go to that day. My cousin, Ian Stenson, who was also in the same regiment, had joined up, but he was just going for the interviews at the army careers.
Okay.
And I had a day off, and I thought, I'll come down with you. Still to that moment, I was literally not even considering the army. I had no reason to join the army. I was just finishing my apprenticeship as a stonemason. And I remember going down to the army careers and sitting in there, and it was Sergeant Q, Neil Q.
Yeah.
He definitely, I don't know what he does now. He's definitely got to be in sales or something because he sold me the dream. I went and he literally said, "Sit in that room there in our interview." My cousin there, Ian. And I sat in the room and he put the video on. It's the best video in the military. You go skiing, you play football.
Selling the dream.
There's a video of you in the pub drinking, and it's like they're selling the dream. And I was like, you know what? That looks like good fun, and you get paid for it. So I literally was like, where can I sign?
Right.
So it wasn't until that moment I had ever considered the army. And they put me on the scales, did the old weight, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're a bit heavy," sort of thing, And I thought, well, just send me to the weekend in Lichfield for the selection.
Mm-hmm.
If I pass, I pass. If I don't, I don't. It's not something I'm passionate about at this moment. So I literally joined on a bit of a day off work, really.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah,
it's funny to think about now, I'm sure, but that decision shaped your entire life, really.
Yeah, I mean that one decision on that one day completely changed my mindset and the whole of how my life's turned out. Completely changed. I was probably at that point going down a path of like a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, getting involved with a lot of girls, driving your cars, hanging around McDonald's, getting a bit of trouble, a bit of bother. So I'm not saying my life would have gone down that route, but I was certainly...
Do you say hanging around McDonald's?
Oh yeah, in your car, you know what I mean? Big exhaust, and try and get the chicks. That's where you hang
People
out.
still do that now, don't they?
I think they do.
Okay.
I do.
I think they're on electric scooters though.
All right. Fair.
But yeah, I was just doing a lot of that. So yeah, but that one day I had off for a funeral, completely changed and transformed my path through life.
It's strange how life does that. You have these pivotal moments and you weren't expecting something, and then your life takes a completely different direction.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's all kind of, maybe it's supposed to happen that way,
Yeah, I think your life's already panned out for you.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We're getting real deep, real early. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that.
We're going deep early.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. The kind of philosophical side we can definitely re-explore later. But talk us through. So you've made this decision now. You've seen the video. You've been sold the dream. What are your first? It's 12 weeks of training, right?
12 weeks. Yeah. Well, you got selection first. You have like 2 days at Lichfield selection.
Okay.
To whether you can meet the criteria of the British Army and the standard. You have your 1.5 mile run. You do your tests, your fitness test, your medical. But actually, the first time I went down there, I actually failed. I actually failed. So I was dreading it anyway. I was absolutely really getting concerned. I was like, okay, I'm a bit overweight. I've never run a mile in my life, and they're expecting me to do all this, and I'm like, I haven't got a clue. But I failed my medical, so I got down there and I had a heart murmur. I think a lot of people have a heart murmur. They pick up on heart murmur. They send you away and you get tested, and I was sort of okay, but it gave me those extra few weeks to thought, okay, I need to do something. And but the second time I went back for selection, I still hadn't run a mile. I still didn't take it serious. So I'll just wing it.
That's the thing, right? Because when you're young, 1.5 miles doesn't feel like it's a long way to run. But anyone who's never run before, it's actually really difficult to do.
It's probably the hardest part of a run. The first mile is probably the hardest part because your heart rate increases massively. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember going there and not once have I run a mile in my life. Oh. And I got there. And we did circuit training first, and I was like, almost as bad as the one this morning, to be fair. I almost had flashbacks of that selection. But I literally, did the circuits, and I thought, this isn't for me. I'm really struggling. I'm looking around all these young lads and all these people that have obviously dreamt to be in the army, and I'm thinking, this isn't for me. Let me do the beep test, and I did okay in the beep test. I think I just kept going. I thought, if I'm not the last, then there's a chance. Yeah. And then we did the run, and I remember standing at the start line, looking at everybody in their little tiny shorts, running trainers, and I'm thinking, I'm wearing like my football shorts and a cotton t-shirt, thinking, I'm certainly not in this category. I shouldn't really be here. And off we went, and I think the cut-off time was like 12 minutes, which, looking back, it's probably quite a long time. But I think I did it at 11:55. So I just came in.
A win is a win.
I thought, well, that's the cut-off point. I'm going to make sure I get to the cut-off point. I'm not in trying to impress. Mm-hmm. But I literally, I struggled to get through that finish line at 11:55. And I passed that, and and I obviously joined the Queens Royal Hussars.
And then you have your 12 weeks of training at that point. And that's when your life is turned upside down. You're like,
so I remember going in, and I think there was about a 4 or 5 week from passing selection, and anyone would think, well, now I know what's like, I need to be training. Because I passed selection, I almost thought, I've done it. Yeah. I'm all right now. Yeah. And I rocked up to selection, rocked up to phase 1 training, and they do all your medical and that sort of stuff. And I weighed 16 stone 4, which... I mean, I'm 6 foot, but 6'4", I'm still carrying a bit of body fat. And I remember, and it took me back to my childhood, because I remember going into the first PT session where they beast you almost to find where your level is. And I was singled out by the PTI, which is the personal trainer, the physical training instructor.
Right.
And he would literally call me bitch tits. So like man boobs, things like that. I mean, it won't happen this day and age. It won't be allowed. So I was singled out straight away as bitch tits and all that sort of stuff, and they'd make me jump on the crash mat, on a big thick crash mat, knees to chest, which is really hard. But this is where my mindset shifted. Mm-hmm. This is where I thought, I need to turn this into drive. Yeah. Fuel. To fuel. Yeah. And no matter what they threw at us during that training, I knuckled down. The sergeant used to come in. I remember it now. He used to come in, and we were all young lads. We were away from our homes. We were sort of in the army. At this point, you think you've already made it. You think you're great. And so your room was a bit of a mess, your bed wasn't made. So the sergeant would have us running around the parade square
Right.
on our hands and knees making pig noises. You want to live like pigs, you act like pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of thing. And there's always discipline that started to throw into my life, which completely changed my mindset. And and I literally went there, and the training was probably the hardest 12 weeks of my life. I was certainly at the back of the pack when it comes to the fitness, not so much the academic side of it all.
Right.
Like your weapon handling and all that sort of stuff. I was quite on your signals, all that radio, so I was quite good at that. But I was definitely at the back of the group when it comes to the sort of fitness and the physicality of it all.
But hey, you did it all the same, right?
Yeah.
This is all in Winchester.
In Winchester, yeah. So down Winchester 12 weeks. But I've passed out at 13 stone 1. So within 12 weeks, I lost just over 3 stone.
Which, for anybody who's ever tried to lose any weight whatsoever, will know that's an incredible amount of weight to shift in that.
Yeah, I just think that the constant comments and the digs from my hierarchy, which when I look back was probably wrong, but then I also understand why.
Well, I've got a question for you both, actually, around that, because you did kind of mention that in this day and age, it's probably not the road they would take necessarily. I know there was a lot, particularly with the PTIs, a lot of kind of singling people out and trying to push them to their limits by, I don't want to call it bullying, that's not the right word for it, but it does borderline a little bit. I used to see it when I was working down with the Navy, so you can see what it does to people. But did you ever experience the opposite of that, where it demotivated somebody, it didn't give them the motivation, or did everybody eventually get the mind shift, do you think?
No, I think I've seen it work in the opposite way, where it's like broken people when they've left, for sure.
And do you think that's a better thing? Because
I think that's one of the reasons that they do it. You've got to be mentally strong. I know it's not the right way to do it, but it's, it makes you robust, and you've got to have a strong mind and a strong body to get through all that.
Because there's a level of trauma you're going to see and be experienced to within the army, within any of the forces potentially, where if you are sent to a war zone, if you're sent somewhere that's struggling and you have to fight, you're going to see things a lot worse than how you have been bullied within the basic training side of things. And I'm using the word bullying, and I really don't know a better word to use for it at this point. But
technically was bullying.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't when you got sergeants in training singling you out and literally just constantly on you. They're constantly, but I understand that they are literally on you for a reason.
Yeah.
They know you can do better, but like skis to them, it can break you as well.
Yeah.
You can either look at it as fuel and motivation, or you can keep looking at it and just beat yourself up and go, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
And that's what the army are trying to find. They're mentally strong.
And that's what you needed as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
you want people that you can trust in the worst situations to have your back and do the right thing. So it's always a fascinating subject for me. Again, I've not lived that life. I've seen it and I've experienced it from third position. Anyone who's ever watched a film has seen it from that angle. But I do think it's kind of lost to time that level of pushing. It has been quite important in nurturing the soldiers of tomorrow and keeping people focused, I guess is the best way to put it, on what they are there to achieve and what they're there to do. And as much as it can break people and get them out, I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing sometimes. And you need, we see it with Muay Thai training as well to some degree, not to bring it all full circle or whatever, but that if you just can't handle the basics of the exercise, no amount of pushing is going to help that anyway. So it's usually better that you do step away from it and don't hurt yourself.
I think
someone else.
help somebody find out who they are and what they're about.
Yeah, exactly right.
If they can't handle the pressure in fighting or whatever it may be, then that's not for them.
Yeah, fully.
They can go, okay, I've tried, that's not for me. And that's when the instructor would go, okay, this is why we pushed you. This is why. As long as there's an understanding, not just, oh, he's a bully.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can stand back and go, okay, this isn't for me. This, I gave it a go, it isn't for me. It's not the path I want to take. And they can go and find their path in life.
Exactly right, yeah. And you've both been shaped positively, I would say, arguably, for the most part, I'd hope, by these kind of life lessons as well. I know Stefan uses them when he's doing Muay Thai. I've never heard him ever even come close to bullying someone, but he will push you to your limits to ensure you're getting not just the best out of the session, but he gets the best out of you as well. And the principle's the same essentially. So.
Yeah, I mean, I witnessed it this morning. My son did training with us. He's not doesn't do a great deal of training.
He did, yes, he did.
But Stefan pushed him.
And he did it, by the
He
way.
pushed it.
Yeah.
But he gave him that, at the end of it, a well done.
Yeah.
So, and then also, you would feel proud then. You think, well, I've achieved it. And I've made my instructor proud. And, you know, and that's what you want in terms of feedback.
For the viewers that can't see, he is sat in the room. We're just going to give him his flowers and just say, you did an incredible job, by the way. And, yeah, it's not easy. That session this morning was very, very
sleeping
difficult.
in the car on the way home now.
For sure.
To be fair. Well, I'm done here. I'm sleeping.
So are you.
I know. I'm supposed to be driving as well.
All right. So you've gone through very, very difficult process of basic training. You've passed out now. You've joined the army. This is kind of where life changes, I guess, for both of you. You know, when you go through this, but very specifically, you know, now. Firstly, what did you expect when you passed out? What was the expectation versus the reality of where you actually ended up?
When I passed out of the army, you go to phase 2 and you do your tank training because we were a tank regiment. But when you get to the regiment, I wasn't too sure whether it was still for me or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because training, you look at your sergeants, your corporals, and you're like, yes, corporal, no, corporal. And I thought, is that the life I want for the next 10, 20 years, living that structure? But as I got to regiment, you realise your sergeants and your corporals, they become friends.
Right.
But during the setting and during working hours, there's that respect. You know, I'd always call ski sergeant or staff sergeant, or whatever it may be. But everyone becomes brothers, and it is true. Everyone becomes brothers and sort of help each other out. There's no judgment. There's I say about the bullying again. At the regiment, there's very little, very little. But because at this point, you knew whether this is for you or not.
Whether you're literally your brothers now, aren't they?
And I think the sergeants, PTIs in the regiment, they sort of knew. They knew, okay, you've made it through this far. They respected you for that, and I think that showed. When you got to regiment, it became a big family.
Yeah. And
it was definitely a lot easier in the regiment than it was during training. Training's there for a reason. It's there to sort of, you know, weed out the weak and make the strong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, literally the regiment, it was Royal Department training. But at that point, you've learned respect, you've learned discipline, and you've learned a lot of skills, mentally and physically. So the regiment was a lot easier life than the training.
Does that echo your own experience?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, training's always going to be the hardest bit. Obviously, we had difficult times through our military career when you go operational tours and all this other stuff, which we'll probably cover it. But regimental life itself was pretty cool. We were we'd go down the Naffy bar and have a couple of beers in the evening, and
we're weekend millionaires.
Oh, yeah.
We literally live for the weekends. Yeah. Literally, I mean, I knew lads selling furniture out their rooms to go out drinking.
Yeah.
It was definitely that. We were that generation where it was literally weekend. You live for the weekend.
Well, we're in Germany as well, so obviously it's
so we lived in Germany, so
a bit cheaper. You're paying like £1 for a bottle of beer in the mess or in the Maffy.
I remember the one kind of nightclub. It was a nightclub, and it was 5 cent at Vodka Rebel.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And so you used to buy a tray. Fun Factory, it was called. And,
Fun Factory.
The Fun Factory by name, eh?
Yeah, you go in there. It was like 5 cent for Vodka Rebel. So it was. I think our generation, we lived that weekend.
Yeah.
Because we were young and we were living away from home in Germany, and you're basically spending all your time with your friends and your brothers and that. And so it's definitely a weekend millionaires. For the first 2 weekends anyway.
Yeah, and then you were skint.
then you look at
then your friends, you'd be like, "Oh, I can't come out. I've got no money." You might go, "No, I'll lend you 50 Deutschmarks or euros, whatever it was, and pay it back next month." And you're like, "Oh," and then you're out again, and then it's like. But what was I going to say to you? I can't remember now. It's gone.
Well,
it'll come back to me.
Well, what I will say is that was echoed in normal civilian life as well. Like, we were payday millionaires.
Yeah.
In 2003, I was working in Butlins, which is nothing like the army, obviously. But you wait for that weekend, you get your paycheck, you go out, you blow it all in that one weekend, and then you're eating pot noodles for the rest of the month.
I think I was going to say we're the fittest alcoholics that you could ever meet, because we would drink literally all weekend, and then Monday we'd be running, tabbing, whatever, doing everyday hard physical tasks.
In my current age, I can't think of anything worse than going on a night out and then having to go and do any kind of training.
It takes about 3 days to recover now.
Yeah. I mean, you used to come in at 6 a.m. sometimes, and you're on PT at 7,
and
you've been drinking vodka Red Bull all night, and you're thinking, I don't know. I don't even. Some sessions I didn't even remember.
It's a hard pass for me. I'll never do that.
It's pretty tough, but you get used to it.
Yeah, I bet.
It became the norm.
Yeah.
So, this part of kind of your career within the army now is like this is before you've had any deployments, I assume.
Yeah.
So, do you remember your first major deployment, and where was that to? Where was that to? Excuse me.
2003 was my first real deployment, operational tour. Previous to that, we had done training, went to Canada and did some training over there. But first operational tour was Iraq 2003.
Oh, okay. So for anyone who's kind of in the same age bracket as myself, you will remember the Iraq War and how that sort of came about as well, off the back of realistically 9/11 kind of really rallied that up. I know there was a tour before that in the early 90s, I think it was. Where
first golf, which ski was on.
I didn't realise you did the first deployment as well. Yeah, okay. Well, so you've seen both.
Yeah.
Post and pre 9/11 really as well.
But the Gulf War was different to the tour we're talking about. This tour was more in kind of built up areas where the Gulf War you're in a desert, literally doing tank battles. So
this was at the apex and this kind of height of the world had kind of changed at this point as well, hadn't it? 2001 onwards, it had felt like there was a shift in the world, and now you're being deployed to this war zone, which had been going on by this point for a couple of years. Tell us a bit about that.
I think I was about 22 years old, and I remember having a meeting on the parade square saying that we're training now for Iraq and that. And as a first deployment, but this is what we've trained for.
Yep.
So there was a bit of excitement going, we're actually going to go and do our job. But there was also moments where you think, this ain't good. This could go south.
Of course.
And Optelec 1 and 2, because it was Optelec 3 that we were on. So Optelec 1 and 2 already out there. And we were losing quite a lot of soldiers at that point. So there was always that bit of nervousness going into it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a moment where you think, well, it's real now. We've been having fun. We've been on exercise, playing soldiers, having great times, things like that. But when it comes to it, this is the real deal now. So you got to switch on. And on Optelec 3, I was chosen to be the squadron leader rover group, which is technically close protection for the squadron leader when he goes to do the meetings.
Right.
So I wasn't protected in a big troop or in a tank. There was only a few of us really.
Right.
And we're always vulnerable and solo out on the ground, going to some meetings which, there was a lot of politics involved. So there was a high threat on a lot of the meetings we used to go to. It was definitely knowing we were going out there as a rover group was quite a nervous time.
At this point in your life, excuse me for bringing this up, I'm sure it was going to come up anyway, but obviously you're married. Yeah. And were you with your partner at that point?
No, I was between. No, I was single. No, I was single back then. I think anyone in the army, it's difficult to have a relationship.
For sure, yeah.
Very difficult. I had a few girlfriends between times, but they would never last. 'Cause I lived in Germany, and it just never laughed. And so as I was single when I went out onto the first Optelec 3. I was single and just really my parents to worry about me, really, no one else.
Okay, all right.
I think one of the things, that I knew, once we were like going to war, one of the tours was when they went, right, you'll need to write a letter home to your parents in case you don't come back.
Yeah, I remember the letter and the will in the little brown envelope. And then I remember I had to pack our rooms up into these big boxes in case we got killed. Yeah. So our rooms. So you're going through these emotions of packing your room up, thinking, I'm packing my room up in case I die.
Yeah.
And then you're writing your final letter, which I believe I might still have actually somewhere. But also the final letter you write to your parents, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened, blah blah. And then you write your little will and things like that. So it became very real, very quick. When you're packing your room up ready to go.
I mean, it's for somebody who hasn't lived that, it's quite you can use the word insane, but it's not the word I'm looking for really, but just that's a mad process to go through. Yeah. Like you're basically preparing.
It's not normal.
Yeah,
it's not normal.
What does that do to you kind of mentally, like having to almost prepare